Hello, welcome back. So for today's tutorial, we try to go back to something old school. So that means supposedly if you don't have any Kinect or don't have any Arduino, don't have any media pipe plugins or other extensions, so how you can achieve something that we in the past call the old school way of doing motion sensing or motion tracking or detection. So all make use of the camera input from here. So let's start with some exercise for the very basic one, just like creating a button with motion, and the logic seems to be quite straightforward, so I'll go through the old-fashioned way, and there's another one that's a prefabricated component in the TouchDesigner distribution called Motion Sense. I also use it to create a separate component called Motion Button that you can download and make use of in the future. So let's start with the video input. So that is the video input. I do not need to downsample this one, so but for this one I just connect it to a crop. So the reason of using a crop I'll explain later. And then after that one, in the old day of doing motion analysis, so what we need to do is to perform something we call analyze. So we'll analyze the camera image by using this top, and the top we can do, for example, like the averaging of all the pixel information within this. So we can specify full image, that is the whole frame of the top, and then whether we exclude some invalid one and whether we have any mask. So that one will actually give you only one single pixel one by one, and then with that averaging color value. So you can see if I put something pretty like dark in front of the camera, it changes the hue around here. So this one we can send it to a chop where we can have a look of the RGB. So that one we use pretty often from top to chop, and we can just specify full image, but it doesn't matter because that one actually is only one pixel. So it will give you the pixel information, the RGB around here in front of your webcam. So the next step is we put something in front of the camera. We note of the change in the RGB values. So how we can make use of those changes in order to indicate that something moving in front of the camera. So we can detect the change by using something called the slope. That is the change between current frame and the next sample. So you can see if there are no change in front of the camera, they stay more or less close to zero. But if there are changes, so you can see the value change. So the value change can be negative and positive, but sometimes if we just want to detect change but do not care about changing to a brighter or darker pixel, then we can take the absolute value. We just keep the positive value of the RGB over here, and then the next step is how can we determine how much change is qualified as valid motion. So we can use logic to make use of like the range of those changes. So in logic actually you can specify whether you would like to have 0 or 1 according to a pair of bounds, so that is the range. So the default one is 0 and 1, so between 0 and 1 there will be 1, and then outside this one will be 0. But now for this version we want the opposite, so if we want it to detect motion, so probably they are beyond 1, so in that case we can specify, for example, 1, and then 999, it will be a very huge one. So whenever there's something moving in front of the camera, so that the value will be beyond this bound, so that range that you can also change if you want to have a bit more motion, that you can make the lower bounds a little bit higher, so that gives you the more sensitivity, that if you want to detect the types of motion you want to identify. And then the other thing you can also consider is how you're going to combine the 3 value into 1. So you can actually combine the channel by using these logical operations. So I will just pick all, so that means any change in the RGB value beyond the range that we would like to detect, it qualified to be considered a motion, so that will give you some ideas about something changes here. And the other thing you can further improve on this type of thing, you can see the change actually is quite frequent, and sometimes it's too sensitive that multiple changes detect together, so within a very short period of time. So to get around with this issue, usually we can make use of a trigger from here up, this one. So trigger is something similar to the music terminology. Is the envelope is something like the attack and sustain decay, so that is the curve that you have when there are changes in the value, that at this moment is the R0. So you can see that the trigger value is a little bit slowing down the whole detection process. And if you want to just keep 0 and 1, you can also add one more logic here to indicate you want to detect only the rising edge but not the falling edge or the sustain value. So in that case you detect whenever the trigger have a rising value. And depending on the types of button you would like to do, so that one in TouchDesigner term is called the momentary button, that is only have a very short trigger. And if you would like to detect, for example, a toggle button, that you can also add a logic to detect or to register as a toggle. So that means it's an on off, so it will stay on until you have the second trigger. So that is the toggle button. So with this one actually you can implement some simple effects. I just take something extremely simple to have one default video input and then another one which is an invert of the whole image, and then I can make use of the switch to determine which image I'm going to send to the output window here. So the logic, I connect it to the node and then use it to export the chop to the index of the switch, was actually try to switch between the normal video and also the inverse video, so that is something like this one. Okay, so for the full screen display it is something like this. Is if I move in front of the camera, so that will be the inwards, and then going back inwards, get back. So I use this purse because it's dark colors for easier detection. Okay, and the reason I make the crops around here is actually sometimes you do not need to detect the whole range in front of the cameras, that you may just want to detect part of the screen. So in that case you can determine, for example, which area of the screen you would like to detach by cropping the size of this screen visually. For example, if you would like to detect the 2-millimeter pool over here, so you can just crop the region that you want to detect and then try to move in front of the screen again. So if I make the movement in the other side of the screen, it actually doesn't have any effect until you put it in front of them, so that you have this effect. So using here, nothing but waving here, then you have this. So that is the purpose of using the cropped top in the motion detection or the motion button implementation. So now this now actually function as a button, that you can name it as button or whichever, that you can use it for controlling the switch, or you can also use a counter to step through a number of effects you want to have. So that is the very basic one. So in terms of the functionality, actually if you go to the palette browser, so in the selection of techniques, so there's one called motion sense, which function in a similar way. So I also believe this also make use of the analyze to detect the pixel value for comparison. So we can reinterpret the existing function and then try to make a version by using the motion sense. So for this one, I'll also create a separate project that you can download from the Patreon, and then before we move on with the next one. Okay, so for the next one, I can just remove everything except the switch. I'm also using this as the basic effect. Okay, so now I reset the crop first, and then try to get a copy of the motion sense from the palette browser. Then you can have a look. Okay, and it doesn't work at this moment because the motion sense actually will by default try to open the available camera. So if you don't want to repeat the video device in, you can make it inactive. So when you make it inactive, you try not to open another camera inside the motion sense plugin or component. So you can just connect this one, the image you want to have, directly to the motion sense and then perform your motion detection. So the result will be a chop that with the name trigger that you can also do something like this one. And there's also some parameter that you can try to analyze that how you would like to change the sensitivity and also the threshold of the trigger that you want to play around with. And then if you want to, then you can also further customize by using what we have just done by using the trigger to sustain a little bit longer for your detection. And then if you want to detect just one, that you can again do the rising edge to send the momentary signal to here. And if you want to play with the toggle button, that you can also use the toggle. Toggle means that the on and off state will stay there until the next trigger. So that's something like this. And which again can go back to your level. That you can, not level, go to the switch here. So essentially that will be the same as what we have just done with the step-by-step going through the analyze and then convert it to the RGB value for individual detection. So this one is the pre-packaged one that you can also use. Pretty handy. And the crop one actually is the same, that you can crop the region that you would like to play around with, and it's very handy in a way that if you don't want to use the immediate pipe for like the finger detection, you can crop a very small region on the screen and then you can use it as a virtual touch to turn on or turn off some of the sounds. And that one is very useful in the past when we make something like the air drum, that you can use the hand to play with some kind of drum set in the air. Okay, and how we can make it a little bit more fancy or more usable in a sense to deploy as some kind of button component. So we can play around with a little bit on the idea of the cropped. So for the crop, at this moment when you crop this one, there won't be any visual response. You only see it from your editor window that a smaller region of the element is already cropped. And if we would like to create something like a more usable or more user-friendly button, that probably we might want to make it as a component with some kind of parameter we can use. So in that case, we can create a constant to simulate this cropping effect first. So we can put the left and then right, bottom and top. So by default the left is 0 and then this one is 1 and then this is 0 and 1. So that one can go to your cropped here, or I can, yes, wait a minute, I can add a node such that I don't need to redo it again later. So I put the left and then right and then bottom. And then top, such that you can use the slider around here for your customization of the button size. So imagine you're going to create a button on the screen that in somewhere that you can use your finger to touch virtually that button. Okay, and then the second thing we would like to do is we would like to have a visual indicator on the screen such that we know there is a button. The button is out there. So we can put a rectangle top, and that one come with the parent size, and I can make it the full screen size of 1 by 1 over here. And I don't customize too much about the visual display, that whether this is white or yellow or red, and I just want to create the border for this one. So in that case I will turn off the fill color, and then but instead I will turn on the border with, for example, like 1 single pixel, which give it a red border, so that will give a full screen red border you can see from here. And then that one I'm going to make a transform to change according to the location of the crop window. So there's 2 things I need to change. One is the size of this one, and the other will be the translate, which is calculated from here. Okay, so in this case let's start the calculation. So first of all, we're going to get the left and right first for calculating the center TX of the rectangle. Once we have this one, we can use a mesh. So you have the option to do all the calculation in an expression with Python, or if you don't want to write any Python expression, then you can use the simple mesh to do so. So the center of the x direction we can just compute by using average, and similarly we can also get the y direction with the bottom and top, and then get the average. And with these 2 of them we can merge it back, getting a little bit confused. And then with the left and right we can rename this one with the proper name. So this would be TX and TY, which better reflecting the location of the square. So in this case we add a null, or we can just use this one to indicate as a position, and then we put it in the translate of your rectangle. when you're going to change this, so you are going to change your location of these rectangles around here. So the other thing we would like to do will be the size. So we're going to adjust the size from here. The original size is 1 and 1, and then we are going to compute the size by subtracting left and right and top and bottom, so we can obtain it by using another tool mass. So one is doing with the left and right again, and we do a subtraction, and then we can multiply -1 to get the positive value, and then we can have another one for the y value, that is the bottom and top. We do the subtraction and -1, and then we'll be able to merge them into one, and then we name the left and bottom into like width and height of your rectangle, and then that will lead to the size that we can put a null with the name size. Okay, one more complication is because we are not using a square for the project window. So the project window is actually a rectangle. So in that case, we must adjust for the aspect ratio. So it's different way that you can do. I can do with a constant, for example, with the height. So I'm using 720, and the width, I can use the short form, and then this 1 to x0 with this, and then the ratio will be a division between these two of them, 0.56 something. So for this one, before we can put it back as the height, so we probably might need to multiply the height ratio with this one in order to make it in proportion with the aspect ratio. So in that case, we have a mess around here, and then we combine the two chop by doing multiplication. So in this case, we will have something we haven't visualized it yet. So we have now this two, and these two of them actually we can combine with our image, that we can add a composite to the final image, and together we can send the rectangle on top of our image. So we are going to adjust this one. example, if you like to crop to the shape of my head, that I can adjust around here. So that will give a rectangle around my head. So I try to have a look of the rectangles around here first. And then we also need to adjust the size of this rectangle from here. So the width and height. In order to reflect onto the final screen. Okay, and then there's also a minor step I forget to do is if you take a look at the crop window number surround here. So the range is between 0 to 1. And if you remember for the position of the rectangle that we are transforming here, the range is be minus 0.5 to positive 0.5 for both locations. So in that case, we need to adjust. So we can adjust before or after. So we can adjust around here. So the original range is 0 to 1, but the new range is minus 0.5 to positive 0.5. So in that case, it will give you the indicator that the crop window is around my head location. So if I move my so that will give you some ideas about what I play around with this particular detection. So that is the use of this particular buttons around here. So you can also try to play around with other locations. For example, in this case, you can so this location will crop. We need to pull around there. So you're going to see something like this. So they are cropping. So the interactions around here doesn't come with anything until you touch upon them. So this is one type of thing that you can play around with this form of buttons. So the final part of this one is you can put them inside a component, and such that you can reuse it in multiple locations. So you can add a component. Call it motion button, and then we'll try to tidy up your screen around here in order to get everything you need inside this. So the thing that you do not need inside this one will be the outputs around here that you are going to send out signal. And the other thing that we need is the input, that is your video camera inputs from here. So then the effect, so we also do not want to put it inside our button. So everything from here we are going to use. And this one, the aspect ratio, you can also consider whether you would like to put it inside your button or you can put it outside, that you can send it there after you create your project. So in that case I can just try to cut everything here. To put it inside a button, and then there will be one input as a top, that's the video image sent from here, and there will be another top, there will be the aspect ratio, that's the screen size, sent from here. So I just put it a little bit far away such that we can understand they are the input. And the final one will be the output, that is the button status, that the trigger one here. So that one I have make it toggle. So if you don't want to use toggle, just momentary button, that you can modify or remove this one. So that is more or less the layout of what we have done in this button, and then we can go out of it to customize. So that is the buttons around here. The first input is the video, and then the second input will be the size of the screen, and then the last one will be our trigger over here. And then we are going to modify the top and buttons around here. So this one now is constant, but if you would like to make it proper button, normally we need to customize this component to add the 4 parameter over here. So I'm going to add a custom page, and for each page I add a flow which is between 0 to 1 as a parameter, and a weight, and a top, and then top. So for the left by default is 0, but right by default is 1. Bottom by default is 0, top by default is 1. So there will be 4 parameters here that we can use it to customize the button location. So for this constant, then we are able to connect it with a parameter. Then which actually come from the definition of the parameter outside. And then with this one you can just send it to the null rather than using the constant. But in the select, because the name changed a little bit with capital letter, I need to do it again with the left and right. So this one is bottom and top, bottom bottom and top. So now we have all those numbers in place around here, and this one come from the aspect. So if you want to, you can also put them in the parameter. Otherwise, you can just take from the constant chop to do all the calculation here. So that conclude what we are working on. So that output from here. Again, we need to have two of them. That is okay. So there's also one missing here, is the image of your button. So I also need to add another output from the top such that you can visualize your button. So otherwise that you are not able to see the visual feedback of the button from here. So that one will go from here. And then you will be able to crop this. To make some change. Let me see the location. And in that case, I probably can turn this one. Otherwise, that will be a little bit difficult to see the windows. So we need now customize again by changing the location. Of the button. So now the buttons is around them. Okay, and then you will be able to do the testing. So that will be something that we have done by this motion detection button. So other than switching the screen, you can turn on other effects like putting a text or changing some kind of background music by this particular trigger. So that is something you can play around with this button. Then the final step, you can just save it with thoughts such that you can use it somewhere else. And you can also have multiple of them if you want to. You can add this one back to your project and then connect here and then revise the position of the button in order to create multiple buttons on the screen that you can touch for interaction. Okay, so that is the first motion exercise. This is the old school motion detection way, and in comparison with the more latest one that you can use Kinect or more media pipe for this interaction. And the next one, I'll try to do something similar by using this old school way of motion detection to put it in some kind of particle effect that using the GPU particles. That was very popular too. So until then, stay tuned for the next exercise. Bye bye.